And the person that I've been in contact with seems to have found a type of code that exists within the language. It's a code of anagrams. It's almost like the real Da Vinci Code. And through this code, I've kind of been led to him, and he's been led to me, and a whole group of other people have been kind of brought together, and it's all very bizarre, folks. I'll maybe tell you a little bit more about it at some stage, but I just thought I'd mention that. It's been something that's been quite intriguing with the last couple of weeks, and some of the people that I've met and the synchronistic instances that have been involved in these meetings has been a bit of an eye-opener. It really has been something quite amazing. So maybe I'll even do a show about it sometime soon if anyone's interested in hearing the whole story, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's been going on. But one of the things that really did interest me in this was that it's very important for the corruption that exists at the top of the food chain to either be exposed or to expose itself. The code seems to indicate that it's very important for this corruption to be addressed and that the human race comes into its power. That was something that sort of pricked my ears up as well, because I really do feel that this is a major issue. This is pretty well the whole issue, folks. This is the crux of the whole thing. I mean, and at the risk of repeating myself, well, I mean, I know I've said this a lot of times, but the situation that we're facing, it really has occurred, and it's been allowed to occur because most people are totally unaware of the realities of how the world is actually run. That's the whole problem. I've been looking at newspapers and stuff lately. I've actually bought a few newspapers just to see, and I'm amazed at the lack of news in the newspapers. There is so much trivia and so much just nothing in the newspapers. There's no information at all. Unless people go online to get their news and start going to different websites, all the newspaper sites, the LA Times, all of these sites, anybody, New York Times, Washington Post, all of them, Reuters, go to all of the news sources and go to all the little news sources as well. Go to blacklisted news, go to all sorts of alternative news sources as well, and compare all the stories. And if you're going to sit down and watch the TV news for an hour or something at home, you're better off just surfing the internet and looking at all the news sources yourself. You'll get a lot more information, and you'll find out a lot more about what's actually going on in the world, and you can get to form your own opinion. It's the television sitting there delivering its opinion, because all the newsreaders are trained to not just present you with their version of the news, but present you with their opinion of the news. They do it through little bits of body language and through having little chit-chats to each other through the news. That's why there's always two reporters, so they can sort of trade off little opinions and smiles. It's a very subtle way of influencing the viewer and instilling an opinion into the viewer that the viewer often doesn't realize they are taking on. But often the viewer begins to take on the opinion that is presented to them by the interaction between these two newsreaders. And most people, all the information they get comes from these television personalities, from these main corporate news systems, or from newspapers that are owned by exactly the same corporations. And these mainstream media sources never inform people to the true facts surrounding anything. It's simply not what the media is designed to do. I know I've said this so many times to you folks, but it's really not what the media is about. The media, the mainstream media, has nothing to do with keeping people informed, and it's got everything to do with controlling information. It's designed to do exactly this, and to shape your thoughts, to shape the beliefs and opinions of the population. You know, this is exactly what the news media is designed to do, the mainstream media. And that's why it's important to look at alternative news sources. There are really so many things going on in the world at the moment. Everything that I talked about just before with the volcano in Iceland and all these different geological things happening, the oil spill, the looming financial crash, the riots in Greece, the fast approaching collapse of economies through Western Europe. We're seeing trouble in Finland, Portugal, all sorts of different countries over there having trouble with their monetary system. And it won't be long before it comes to all Western countries. Any country that has a central bank will soon see a collapse. This is what the central banking system is designed to do. There is really a great deal happening. Now, just to get back to this code just for a little bit, for a second, folks, something that is mentioned in the code, a date that's mentioned in the code is July 22nd of this year. I feel obligated that I should mention that date to you. I'm not sure if anything will happen on that date, but let's just keep that date in mind, July 22nd, 2010, and see what does happen on that date. Now, a lot of people have been experiencing the 11-11 synchronicity, where they'll notice two 11s, they'll get an appointment, and it happens to be at 11 p.m. on the 11th of the month, and things like this. They'll look at their clock, and the clock says 11-11, all sorts of things. There's a lot of people who have been talking about this 11-11 synchronicity. I've had it myself quite a lot in the last few years. But in the last 3 weeks or 4 weeks, almost every time I look at my clock, it says 9-11. And I've seen 9-11 in so many places in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's been quite amazing. So, due to synchronicity, let's just see if something major does happen involving some type of 9/11 type event around July 22nd. Let's look and see what the synchronicity says. Of course, the environmental catastrophe happening right now in the Gulf of Mexico could also be classed as a 9/11 type event, because it truly is absolutely catastrophic. The world is indeed going through some very significant changes, my friends. Perhaps this is what it will take to wake the consciousness up. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And there's a very strong possibility that due to the state of human consciousness at this particular time, due to the unbridled indulgence that a lot of humanity participates in, if everything were to turn to love and peace and free energy in the world right now, there is a very strong possibility that a large section of society would simply collapse into a fit of indulgence. Perhaps the only way to wake some of these people up is for the world to get so negative and so polarized that these people have no choice but to embrace the light and to embrace positive energy and to connect with each other. Perhaps this is the only way to bring to these people an understanding of what reality actually is. Perhaps this is the way the program is designed to run. Perhaps there's no other way. There are many people who are awake and who will be able to handle any type of positive future we could create and not abuse the power and not abuse the privilege to live in harmony with nature, to live in harmony with everything and embrace each other and still embrace technology, to embrace everything that we are capable of. But as I said, there are many who at the current state of human consciousness would simply just collapse into a fit of indulgence. We would probably see a situation not dissimilar to what we saw with the fall of Rome, only to be a lot more high-tech. Perhaps this is the way it has to be. Perhaps it won't be until the very final second, on the final hour, that human consciousness finds enlightenment and perceives the way to change. Perhaps that's what it'll take, but I know that it will occur. I do know that humanity will pull through this. There's ultimately only one place to go, folks, and that's to return to the self. But it would be a shame if the program runs out before we are able to do that. As I've said to you on so many occasions, all the world is a stage, and everything that occurs on it is planned to happen that way. The amount of compounded errors that it took to drill the pipeline that we are now seeing spewing oil into the Gulf of Mexico defies all analysis. And such an array of compounding errors in order to create the perfect environmental disaster really does make me wonder about the whole event. As I said, folks, all the world is a stage. We have an opportunity right now in history to start casting our own play on this stage. We have an opportunity to fix all of the problems that we face. And we have a real need to do this as well, folks. This really does need to be done. There's a lot of people standing up to the corruption in the world at the moment. We see what's happening in Greece. And good luck to the people of Greece. But unfortunately what we're seeing in Greece is violence and riots. This is not a good thing. This is not a good sign. So let's hope that these riots don't spill over into any real hatred, because we don't need violence. We need peaceful rebellion. A peaceful rebellion of non-compliance to the system is what we need. The police in all of these situations need to start doing their job and addressing the corruption the way the people are trying to do. It's a shame that the people are forced into situations where they are rioting simply because they're not getting any satisfaction from their governments. They're not getting any justice from their governments. But when you look at all these riots that happen around the world, in all of these cases, you need to understand why the people are rioting. You need to look past the media hype and understand what it would take to make these people riot this way. Understand what it would take to make you get out on the streets and do what these people are doing.